I'm gonna take you along with me as I paint my Aethos Frameset DIY style. It sounds like a very meticulous thing to do, so go ahead and enjoy, and I'll see you on the other side. All right, here is the frame. It is a pink Specialized Aethos Frameset. Nothing special about it, other than it's pink. It's really fine, but I don't want pink. And here is my setup. I'll be working with the Spray Max 2K Rapid Primer Filler. Got 2 cans of that. And then I have some bike.paint, or paint.bike. Raven Gray, 2 cans of that, and then elderberry. This is what the colors kind of look like. I kind of mashed them down here. There's gray, there's the elderberry, kind of do sort of a blend. Then I have the Spray Max 2K Clear, Gloss Clear, and then 2K Matte Clear. This is going to be for final finish. This is going to be to make it rugged. This is going to be to make it have sort of a satiny matte finish. We'll see how it goes. Then I have Tyvek suits here, a couple of them. Drop cloths, wet dry sandpaper, 1000 grit, 2000 grit. Might not need the 2000 grit, but we'll see how it goes. Carbon fiber rods left over from a drone, and I'm going to be spraying these as I spray the bike just so I can test. And then I have alcohol, simple green, some distilled water just so I can clean the bike. Here's a pump connected to a long hose with a respirator. This is going to be so I don't breathe in those isocyanates that these cans are famous for. So let me walk you through the setup here. So you can see I put those sheets up. I didn't put it on the ceiling just because the ceiling's already white and I don't want to block the light, and it's probably, the spray is probably not going to reach the ceiling very much, so I think it's just going to be fine. So I have this neat little switch here that when I activate it, and there's also timer options, it'll kick on some fans that blow in on both ends of the garage and then suck out through these fans here. And that's there for welding fumes, paint fumes. So it gives me a good amount of airflow. I don't need to do this outdoors because it's winter and it's humid outside. In here, it's less than 50% humidity and about 70 degrees. I have a mini split in the back. This is going to be my stand. It's just a sawhorse with a dowel stuck on the end of it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So if I turn this on, got lots of airflow coming in. I'll keep this pump in this room over here, a little gym, just so it's not sharing airspace with the area in here. And hopefully if any vapors do escape that little chamber I built, it'll go up and out those vents and won't really enter the supply room over here. And then I'll just keep the door closed. I need to strip the parts down of decals and other bits and pieces. This axle here. So there's the axle. Go ahead and put these somewhere clean. What else? We have some kind of a barcode, QR code. Might be able to save that actually. Now a lot of these decals are embedded or they're going to be too small to recreate in the paint. But I will be using stencils to reproduce some of the graphics like the Specialized logo and the Aethos on the front and the Specialized S logo. Let's see, how can I get this one off? Is this, I don't know if you can see that guy right there. Seems to be well embedded. It's just a UCI code of some kind. But I'll just take a picture and I might be able to either purchase or recreate it in some way if I need to, but I'm not too terribly crazy about needing it. So I'll go ahead and take photos of everything else on here. All right, so that's about ready. I need to figure out how to get this off, but I'll do that in a bit. All right, now the frame, same deal. I'm gonna take off the axle and any decals that will readily come off. And then I'll unscrew a bunch of these details. All right, let's see where we're at. I think I got just about all of it. There's a little bit of residue stuck on here, but that'll all come off in the sanding. Same with the little derailleur protector or dealie. But this looks like it's been stripped down now. To give you some idea of the painting schedule that I'll be going for, I have it printed out in an Excel sheet. It's going to take approximately 9 or 10 days to do this if I keep up with it every day. I want to make sure that the paint layers, because they may not be compatible between the color and the spray max, I want to make sure that they are completely cured and they're not going to have any weird mixing going on. So I'm going to keep this nearby and I'm going to start sanding. So I already sanded and washed it once. I actually followed up with some simple green and then hosed it off and then let it drip dry. Now that it's dry, I'm gonna go ahead and resand it because I was handling it before I sanded it, and I want to make sure that I get any oils out of it, any grease, anything, contaminants that may have been worked into it in the previous sanding. So I'm gonna do it again, same process, and then I'm gonna again wash it with simple green to get anything and everything off of it, and then I'll follow it up with a spray of distilled water. Just to make sure there's no minerals or extra contaminants in the hose water, and to make sure everything's off of it. But spraying it down with a hose should also help me get everything in the frame that might want to come out again during the painting process. So that should help ensure a perfect finish. I'll continue on with this and I'll get back to you in a bit. Okay, now that the bike frame has dried completely, I'm going to check it for dust. Using a clean glove, I can see that there's a little bit of powder on my finger now, and it looks like there's some remaining residue that I need to clean off. Now that the frame is clean and dry, I'm going to apply these stickers, cut them out of a vinyl cutter. They're little round stickers that are going to cover little holes here that I don't want filled with primer or any kind of paint. I should have enough here that it should apply to each layer, and I can peel each off between the layers, between primer, color, and gloss. Okay, the masking is finished, and I have my sample carbon fiber rods right down here on the floor. I'm going to paint those as well as the frame and the fork. It's going to be done in 3 coats. First, a light coat. I'll wait about 5 to 10 minutes for the flash off. And then within 20 minutes, per their instructions, I need to do the second coat. And then after that, do the third coat. And then I'll let it sit for a full day at least, maybe up to 3 days, depending on my schedule, before I do paint. And then for paint, I'm going to do a wet sanding before I do that application. So it'll be a long process, but for you, it'll be really quick. So hang tight. Okay, now that the primer is finished, I'm going to go ahead and test one of these sample pieces that I painted on. I did a little mask on here just to kind of simulate what that would look like, and how durable the finish would be. So you can see it's a little bit scratched under here because I prepped the finish just like I did with the bike frame. And I have here some different varieties of abrasive materials. So I have to kind of simulate a scratch test. I have some, looks like some kind of a soft metal bristle, and then or a thinner bristle, and then a very thick steel bristle. These are used for like welding prep or cleanup. So I'm going to go ahead and put these over here, and we can test that out. So let's go ahead and start scuffing it. It's getting shinier and smooth, but it's not scratching it yet, not nicking it anyway. All right, that looks good. So I'm going to try the very harsh bristle brushes now. I don't expect this to survive, but we'll see. It did. Look at that. It's definitely scratched, but it didn't peel up at all. So if I could take that kind of beating on the sample pieces, I'm hoping the frame is going to fare just as well. So I'll get to sanding that and prep it for the color. This is the plan for the paint. And I'm going to do a dark, let me grab this, dark gray for this whole frame on the first layer. And then on the second layer, I'll do the same thing, but at the bottom here is going to be a dusting of the elderberry. And it's going to sort of splash in a gradient pattern up toward the top of the frame, a bit like this. So that's the hope anyway. Okay, the bike frame is now sanded and cleaned up. I gave it a once over with a low fiber cloth meant for painting, and then some rubbing alcohol. Once I get the paint on there, any layers of paint, I don't want to use alcohol or any kind of paint remover or solvent. So I shouldn't have to sand or clean it up afterward anyway, but I may give it a light sanding before I do the clear coat. For this first paint layer, I was originally going to start with gray, but instead of doing the Specialized logo through the gloss coat, meaning the logo's in gloss and then the rest of it in matte, I think it's a little bit too easy to damage. So instead, I'm going to do elderberry, the purple color with the logos, stencil it, then do the whole thing gray, and then do that gradient finish that I wanted, that I described earlier. All right, with that first layer of paint on, I have some more masks here, and I'm gonna apply them again onto the entire frame. And then I'm going to be able to start masking with the stencils before I paint the first base layer of gray. All right, so here they are. Here are the test stencils. It's part of the Specialized logo. I have additional ones here that I'll use for the actual bike. I already put some transfer paper on here, and now I just need to carefully lift it off. It's okay if I screw up here, but this will be practice for the actual logos. All right, just like this. Okay, so here it is. I'm going to go ahead and just place it on here. Then peel off the transfer tape. Just like so. I can actually spray these all soon and give it a test to see if my plan will work. You might be wondering why I've covered 2 of the sample pieces with paper towel. That's because I don't want to paint them here, just in case I make a mistake or I realize I need to reapply the stencils in a certain way to prevent bleeding. I took off the masks. This is the single light spray. I noticed it is a bit textured. I think this was sprayed a little bit too far away, but the stencil turned out really well. This one I went back over with a second coat, a little bit closer. It's a little bit smoother, but I can still feel the texture underneath. So I'm gonna do a little test and find out if I can sand this down or how smooth I can get it and its interaction to the stenciled part using a little bit of wet sanding. All right, yeah, this is much smoother now. There's a little bit of orange peel look to it though, a little bit of a noise pattern. I'm gonna keep sanding it and see if I can get this down to smooth, or if I need to do another layer of paint if I ever encounter this. Either way, I think I need to be a lot closer, I think 2 to 3 inches from the bike frame when I paint the gray, because I want to avoid that noise pattern, the bumpy texture finish. Since this is a test piece, I'm going to keep going, see how far I can sand it. Okay, yeah, I'm starting to go through the paint now. So the stencil's starting to get etched into before I can completely smooth the entire thing. It was smooth, but there was like a little bit of a texture finish to the sheen. So I guess if there is a texture, then I need to go back over it with a closer spray and then make sure there's enough buildup to avoid getting back into the stenciled area. As for durability of the paint that is on here, it seems pretty durable. Yeah, a little tiny nick right there. And it's all scratched, of course, but there's no chunks coming off or anything. So, all right, I'm gonna get to the bike now. I went ahead and wet sanded the elderberry color just because there's a little bit of a spatter pattern on here around the edges where I didn't completely paint it. And I don't want that showing through the raven gray pass. I'm gonna go ahead and tape up where I believe the Specialized logo is gonna sit so that it's symmetrical on both sides. And after that, I'll get the stencils prepped and I'll apply them. I don't like how the second Specialized on the other side is looking. It's slightly offset this way and maybe slightly higher than this one. I tried to get it centered, but you know, don't always get it the first time. But I do like this side, and I do like how the front looks right now. I'm gonna reprint this stencil and then try again. Okay, there's something I need to confess. When I came back over here, I took a look at the frame, and the Specialized, the E on the end here, it was a C. The mask must have torn off perfectly. I etched back in that little bit of the E. I need to come back in and clean it up later, but the rest of the bike looks pretty good. It's a bit rough right now, texture-wise, but it's better than the sample pieces I did before. So I'm gonna go ahead and sand it very lightly, wet sand it once it's cured. And the fork turned out beautifully. In one area, let me show you, right along here, I don't know if you can see that really well, it's kind of blotchy. The black is sort of coming into the purple there. I sanded a little bit too far. I'm gonna have to go over it with some more paint. The Specialized logo looks really nice, both of them. And then the Aethos on the front looks really clean. There's a few little fibers in there. So I'm gonna go ahead and keep cleaning this up, get all the dust off of it, let it sit for a few hours, and then probably give this another little lick of paint just to kind of blend it back in. And then tomorrow I'll do another sanding and see if it holds up. All fixed. For the serial number, I've printed my own version of the label. It's a QR code to the product and the serial number on it, what it is, what size it is, where it was made, when it was made. So this is a test piece. I printed 4 more on Waterslide material, and I'm going to use this sample piece to slip it on. I'm not going to use gloves for this because it's not the actual bike frame, but give this a shot. Here we go. I've never done this before. Right, so I'll see how durable that is. It was not. They're already cut out, so should be ready to put in water. First, I'm going to give the frame a little wipe with some distilled water. Make sure I get the orientation right. I think that's right. Yeah. Got the microcell ready. All right, something like that. And they say you want to put some over the top of the logo or the decal as well. Let's do this one. Excellent. Actually, this one, I'm going to be smart about this. You're supposed to lift the entire thing up, hence the term water slide. How does that look? I'm going to let it sit for at least 24 hours before I do anything. Looks straight to me. I'm not going to touch it. I'm not going to touch it. Okay, it's been 24 hours, so the finish should be what we're getting out of this paint. I like the front, how it looks. It has, you know, sort of a matte look to it. I did finish it with a single matte coating on top of 2 gloss coats. Not quite the finish I'm looking for. I want it to be a little bit more uniform. And then, I don't know if you can see right up here, there's a little speck catching the light. I think I can sand some of that back out and then do a few more coats of matte. Yeah, like up here. This finish looks a little bit more matte than this side, but the Waterslide decals are well embedded, which is great. So I'm going to give this another sanding, and after a wash and dry, I'm going to do a few more coats of matte. The bike is now resanded. I didn't go so far that I reached the bottom of those peaks. It's very well sanded, but I didn't want to risk going through the clear coat completely. But I sanded a test piece this way, and with that test piece, just a single coat of the matte clear coat, and it turned out perfect. It's exactly the finish that I'm looking for. I'm gonna keep doing what I've been doing and respray it. You saw the beauty shots. I'm going to show you all the mistakes that I made now. See if I can get you in here. There's a few little blemishes right along here. I could probably sand those out with 2,000 or 3,000 grit sandpaper, but they're hardly noticeable. I don't think anyone's going to really see that. Every time I was sanding, I sanded a little bit of these little bits here that, you know, the bottle holders hang on to. I didn't really care about that. I'm gonna paint them black again later on. So I didn't really show that a lot because I didn't want to embarrass myself, but here I am. And then right over here, next to where the brakes connect, there's a little bit of extra drippage where some bubbles in the drips kind of turn super matte. Otherwise, I think the full frame turned out really well. And probably minimal touch-ups. Looks really good. Looks just like the finish you'd see on a factory unit. So I'm happy about that. Time will tell how durable it is. Now that I've cleaned up, let's take a look at the materials that I used. Here is the primer and gloss. I used about half a can of primer and approximately 2/3 a can of both matte and clear gloss. I didn't use this second Raven Gray Spray Dot Bike can. It's completely unopened, so I can hang on to that. I can actually hang on to both of these used ones because I cleared out the nozzles, so I should be able to hold on to them for a few years, I guess. But maybe 2/3 of this can was used, and barely a third was used of the purple elderberry. I didn't use these scuff pads at all. I thought I would use them for as sandpaper, scuffing the old paint, but I ended up using some lower grit paper here that I had lying around. I used a lot of the 1000 grit and about one little tiny chunk right there of 2000 grit to clear up part of the fork that had some extra drips on it. And it cleaned up really well. So I can barely tell where it's at. But now that this has fully cured, I'm going to go ahead and apply the RideWrap that I got. I just got the bike style, so it should take maybe an hour to apply. Okay, the RideWrap is on. It looks pretty good. You can tell it's there for sure, but it kind of matches the sort of the matte finish, just a little bit shinier. Got one under there. Got these ones on the chainstay and up here. The thicker the RideWrap, the more it has a hard time sticking here. But once you dry it out and keep reapplying it, maybe put some hand heat into it, it seems to stick a lot better. There's this piece here that was actually on the bike frame. I peeled it off. It's very much the same material, I think. This whole section here of RideWrap is unused. So I'm gonna actually take this shape as it fits into this section down here. Make sure it fits around the existing RideWrap, and then cut it out of this RideWrap that I have in the vinyl cutter. Here's a quick overview of how I create my decals. I open Inkscape. I bring in a reference image. That's going to show me the part that I'm trying to make. In this case, I'm trying to recreate a part. My image contains a reference measurement. This is going to be 70 millimeters wide, so I create a shape that is about 70 millimeters, and then I can scale it back down to that size. Once adjusted, I'll start creating shapes. If there's a round shape that I want to keep as a circle, I will use a primitive circle. That way I don't have to try to follow that curve. All the other shapes were splines that were added, and then the corners were chamfered a little bit, and then I went back through and rounded them over. This was then exported into Silhouette Studio, where I had it cut on my Cameo vinyl cutter. All right, here is the original piece that I outlined with my little edit. And here's the piece that I just cut out on the vinyl cutter. Let me show you real quick. Here it is. So they're to scale. Looks like it's stuck down. And there's a nice little gap between the two pieces, so I'm not worried about, overlap or anything like that. All right, that concludes the bike painting process. I would rate it maybe an 8 out of 10. There's a lot of mess with it, and it's expensive, especially for the respirator system, which I will use in the future. But the decals and the fading and the finish and everything turned out really well. So I hope you enjoyed this. And if you're looking to paint your own bike, this gives you some idea what painting a carbon fiber bike is really like. Yeah, never done it before, so